And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Bud Elliott. That's Danny Kanell. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe. Smash that like and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 tailgate, where Patrick knows the show. Patrick jumped in the tailgate and said, I'm just here for Bud's take on the NBA trade deadline. Because if you have been with us for a long time, you know that the number one ball knower, the number one expert for the National Basketball Association and the Cover 3 household, well, that is Bud Elliott, Esquire. So, Bud, listen, we are going to get into another big change for Ohio State as Chip Kelly departs for the Las Vegas Raiders, making his return to the NFL. We've got Alabama bringing in a new old voice as offensive coordinator. Some staff changes at Oklahoma. Nebraska with a very interesting decision potentially regarding its spring game. They had a look ahead to Wednesday's National Signing Day. The very few things that you need to keep your eye on. But Bud, Luka, AD, some other movement in the works. What'd you think?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting trade from the standpoint of like how did they let this go through? This feels like it's anti-competitive in a way to the league, and I know that the Mavs think they're in win now mode, and I guess some of this like Luka slander makes me feel like a little bit self-conscious about my own conditioning. I know he's a pro athlete,
your own body?
But we're not built that different. I mean, he's a little taller than I am, but what was he probably like 6'8", 6'9", 6'10", somewhere around there?
6'8", I think. 6'7", 6'8".
All right, yeah. I mean, so like
the question is whether he's 270 or whether he's actually more like 245, 250.
He's a fatty.
Yeah, I thought they liked him bigger in Dallas, but apparently this is like or
he's only 6'6", by the way, so he's even fatter than he's so fat that he looks taller. That's what we learned from.
Does this stem back to Michael Finley taking the beer from him? He's trying to sell.
No, that was the GM who took the beer from him.
That was Nico
Finley. Yeah, that was Nico, the guy who traded him. He saw he wasn't drinking some light beer, and he's like, all right, we got to get rid of this guy.
See, I just want to know where we stand with the dad bod, because literally 3 days ago, there was a whole article on The Athletic, which was titled All Hail the Dad Bod. And it was praising all these athletes. Luka was in there.
Jokic.
Holmes was in there. It was all these great athletes and how the return of the dad bod is back. So I was feeling great. Now all of a sudden we're getting body shamed.
Remember what John Daly said, right? Can't pull fat. When somebody asked him why you never get hurt.
That's right.
Hey, look, that's sharp right there. We'll have our eyes on the dad bod factors a little bit later on in the week when we give you our Cover 3 edition of a Super Bowl preview.
Like when we talk principal agent issue in college football, like does anybody actually have the long-term interest of the program at heart? This is a much better example of that, I think. It's like, okay, the GM and the coach realize they're going to get fired if they don't win, with the quickness. And I'm not really sure this trade makes them a lot better this year, unless I'm missing something. But I guess they think it might, I guess. Long-term.
Bud's bringing more to the table than I was expecting. Good job,
Bud. Are the Lakers, this was a big enough trade where our group chat talked about it. We don't talk a lot of NBA.
Okay.
Do you think the Lakers are going to re-sign Luka?
Yes.
Yeah.
1,000,000%.
That's the reason you make the trade, right?
Yes. I mean, it's
because then you transition.
I got a couple more talking points.
The biggest driver, the biggest driver of this trade is that Dallas is concerned about his conditioning and his habits, and they're afraid to commit $350 million to him this summer. That's really all it comes down to.
That's reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
So you get something for him instead of just letting him walk, right?
Is he the Bear Alexander?
They got a comp pick?
No, you don't get comp picks in the NBA for that.
So would you rather have a guy that's out of shape or a guy that can never play because he's hurt all the time?
But they kind of go hand in hand down the line. Because people are like, he's only 25, and it's like, yeah, well, what if he's got the same habits when he's 28, and you're paying him $35 to $40 million a year?
Yeah. What's the college football equivalent of this? Also, did the Mavs really need more size in the front court?
They've got like a three-headed monster there now.
See?
And AD could finally play power forward, his dream. College football equivalent. See, this is the thing. I feel bad for Anthony Davis because Like, he's a very good player, and people are just treating it like they didn't get crap in return for him. It's like, you got Anthony Davis. I mean, I understand that basketball-wise doesn't make a ton of sense, but he's like a top 10 player in the league. I don't know. It'd be hard for doing in college because it'd kind of be like trading Nico for Carson Beck.
Okay.
Because of the injury risk?
Nico is not, but Luka is much better than Nico to this point. So I guess maybe trading Arch Manning for Carson Beck.
So even when I was trying to, even like my most flexible muscles of the content brain were stretching this, and I was thinking that it would have to be a transfer situation where the guy who's going to be up next is actually pretty good, but it's just getting trashed by the fan base because they're just sad about whoever left the program. And so like that would be the Anthony Davis role, is if you've got someone in the wings who's ready to go, and it's just that the fan base is like, yeah, but you're not that guy, so therefore we're not ready to go all in on you right now.
This is a lot more time talking about this than I thought we would spend.
I know. I was thinking
at this point we better hit 8 minutes. Like, if we can get this into a headline and justify it on a college ball channel, like this is. I'm trying to think. It's almost, in some ways, it's like, remember when Trevor Lawrence played some as a freshman? And when he played really, really well. And it would be like trading him for, like, I don't know, name the 23-year-old COVID quarterback who was good, but just the other guy had a lot more upside.
I mean, Oklahoma thought that they had it when they let Dylan Gabriel walk.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of the it didn't.
They don't want to pay the Supermax for Dylan Gabriel. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
That's still a thing, right? Supermax
contract?
Yes.
Correct. While we're on the subject, my favorite theory or conspiracy theory is that the Mavs did this because the new owners want to move the team to Vegas. Because the NBA is going to allow one of its teams to leave the Dallas market for Las Vegas instead of just putting a new team in Vegas.
I like the chat actually had this. It's the Mavs kind of screwing with Luka because now he can't get the additional $100 million.
Mm-hmm.
I like that Michael Finley in the front office is the career points leader, and Luka's 300 points away.
Was that surprising to you? I figured that had to be Dirk.
Ship him out. I don't know. Finley played forever.
Yeah, I know, but you would just think it'd be Dirk who led the Mavs in scoring all time.
Anyway, all right, let's get
so now on to the Bulls Kings Spurs trade.
Yeah. and here's some salary, and here's some pieces. Thank you so much for participating, sitting in the hotel room chair in the corner. Anyway, okay.
Cuck chair.
Yeah, Ohio State is now having to look at not only replacing a ton of pieces on the field after claiming the program's 9th national championship. Not only are they going to have to replace their defensive coordinator after losing Jim Knowles to Penn State, they are now going to be replacing their offensive coordinator as well, as Chip Kelly is back to the NFL, this time to be Pete Carroll's offensive coordinator with the Las Vegas Raiders. According to reports, $6 million for Chip Kelly, making him the highest paid coordinator in the league. That is a lot of investment from the ownership on the Las Vegas side, which clearly speaks to the win now attitude of everyone in that division, as everybody is trying to take down the Kansas City Chiefs. But our concern is about the Buckeyes side. Danny, were you surprised? Because we talked about Houston, Jacksonville. We had mentioned it, and then certainly tried to weigh Chip Kelly's own motivations. Is this just like a highest bidder wins, or does this come as a little bit more of either a stylistic or an interesting fit along the way?
So to me, the thing that's surprising is the amount that he got. Did you guys see what he got? $6 million a year to be an offensive coordinator in the NFL. That to me makes it no brainer. You take that gig all day long. It kind of makes it feel like it could be a potential, not head coach in waiting, but Pete Carroll is 73. Like he's getting up there. So yeah, I'm not that surprised at all about it. And then when you hear Ryan Day talk about it, I saw him with Joel Klatt. I guess he had him on like the day this news came out. So Ryan Day was talking about it. And he was like, when I asked Chip to come here, he kind of sounded like he knew this was the end game. Like that Chip wanted to get back to the NFL, and it happened sooner probably than they even thought it was possible. So if he thought that Chip Kelly's goal was get back to the NFL, which it does seem like, then I think everybody wins here. You know,
he
Ryan
won a
Day
title.
was like, great. You know,
Yeah.
like you win a national title, go ahead.
Chip probably won't win many games with the Raiders in that division, considering their roster.
Considering their quarterback.
That's what I'm saying.
Or lack thereof.
I'm excited to see him with Brock Bowers, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that could be pretty nice.
Do they draft Will Howard in like the 3rd or 4th round?
Oh, no, they draft Travion Henderson.
Yeah.
He'll take Henderson higher than anybody else. And then he's going to be an absolute monster in that offense. So what's it? Ryan Day hands off the play calling duties. Now Ryan Day just takes it back. Do we think that there is a splashy offensive coordinator hire, or do you think that he is just going to mainly restructure the staff and keep this thing in house?
So I thought Dave over at Bucknuts had a pretty nice hot board this morning. It came up with Brian Hartline's listed first. I don't know if that's necessarily like has to be it. This is going to be interesting because I think the hire of Chip Kelly for Ryan Day was probably an important one if you ask people around the program, because it allowed him to focus on being more of a head coach and less kind of nose in the playbook. Now, does he feel like he always has to do that, or was this a special year? I don't think he's going to go back to calling plays, but I guess he could. But like Hartline, they've had chances to promote Hartline to the play caller before and have not done so. Now, I don't know if that was just kind of mutually agreed upon. Hey, he's only 38. Like he hasn't called plays before like this. Maybe he just needs to learn under somebody a little bit more. Or if they just like him more as a receivers coach, developer, receivers, and recruiter, which is super valuable.
He's
Obviously,
great.
if you watch the national title game and if you watch the first round of the NFL draft, he does seem to do that, really well. But if he gets passed over this time for it, I think maybe that's worth reading into. Now, maybe they bring in somebody else as well. I thought Dave had an interesting look here with Kevin Wilson, who Day has worked with before over at Bucknuts. Jason Candle always gets mentioned as well by seeming like for every single possible job. I guess he's from Ohio. He played at Mount Union. I don't know that he has any. I think he was in the mix for it last time, but didn't get it when they hired Bill O'Brien. And when Bill O'Brien left, they also didn't go to Jason Candle. Tommy Reese is mentioned. I think if I'm an Ohio State fan, I'm probably like not happy about that if that's who they hire. So I don't know. Like, do you think maybe a Brian Hartline / Kevin Wilson collab here makes some sense, or maybe just Hartline and a Day collab? What do you guys think?
Is it? Oh, sorry, Tom. Go ahead.
I think you return fire. What did Penn State just do to you last week?
Oh,
do that to them.
Oh,
go get Kodal Nicky. Offer him $6 million, just like Chip got.
With Hartline, do you think there's a chance he just doesn't want to be a head or a play caller?
No.
Didn't they try him though for a little bit? Like, wasn't he reportedly calling plays for a few games before Day took it back over?
I think I remember hearing that at some point.
They never really.
So, but like Hartline wants to be a head coach, right?
I would imagine that's his goal at some point, yeah.
But clearly, there's an issue with the play calling, right? Is it because he's been there a long time? We're at a point where it's kind of past like, oh, he's still not comfortable with the playbook or whatever reasons there may be. That's why at some point, do you worry about him going somewhere else just to become a play caller?
Well, I think it's only if he feels like he needs to go somewhere else to get the experience. Because Ohio State is not really a learn-on-the-job type place, I think, given the money they spend, right? That's kind of why I had thrown out like maybe him and Wilson collab or something like that to work together there, or maybe just Dave feels like he's ready.
Well, all right. To build on your
Or do you just keep coaching the best position group in the country and just let your stock rise and then go be a head coach and you skip play calling altogether? Because I don't know why it's a prerequisite that you have to call plays and be a coordinator before you become the head coach. We give coaches, I don't say we, but a lot of people give head coaches a hard time. Oh, he's calling the plays. He can't call the plays and be the head coach. And like if you're Brian Hartline, maybe you're just sitting there thinking, all right, I'm making good money. I got a great setup. I'm just going to every year I'll be in the market and I'll wait for the perfect job to come around and I don't have to worry about calling plays.
Little bit of context for Bud's suggestion on the collab. Kevin Wilson, offensive coordinator for Ohio State from 17 to 22. For that entire time, Brian Hartline was on the staff, and for all but one of those years, first year he's quality control. All the rest of those years, he's the wide receiver coach. He does not get that co-offensive coordinator type role until after Kevin Wilson leaves. And so they have not yet had a shared title at all, but could it absolutely work out based on the success that they had from working on the same offensive staff from 2017 to 2022? Yeah, 100%. If you wanted to sell that, especially with the Kevin Wilson, more experienced, Brian Hartline, who still, again, first year on staff was 2017. We are not that deep. A decade ago, he was still in the NFL. So he is still very much like building out his resume in terms of what he can be. Danny, I don't know if he would even be to a point where you would say, oh, I don't ever want to call plays. He's still young, still trying to figure out what he would do. And I would imagine as a competitor, you'd always like a shot, you'd always like a crack at it. So I can definitely see that along the way.
I mean, I'm looking for Brian Hartline career earnings. He got a 5-year, $30 million contract in 2013 with the Dolphins. He got a 2-year, $6 with the Browns, and then he had an original deal which is the rookie deal, I assume, for $2 and a quarter. So, I mean,
plus the tattoos,
right? Like, yeah.
Plus whatever Tressel got him.
I mean, this guy probably grossed, before you pay your agent and the government, whatnot, like he probably grossed very conservatively here, 25 from the NFL. I mean, like the contract terms were call it 31, 6, and 2, right? So, I mean, that's basically like 39. Let's say he grossed 25. Your take home from that is chop it in half, right? Like just call it 12. Like most of these assistant coaches out there did not take home $12 million from the NFL after taxes and paying your agent. So maybe he has the ability to be really picky here.
That's what I think.
Yeah. Just hang.
Yeah. And I mean, if you watch if you know your strengths, I mean, some guys are just not great play callers. He might be awesome. He might be the next great offensive mind. But if you look at what happened to Eric Bieniemy, look at what happened to him once he got away from Andy Reid, once he got away from Patrick Mahomes. Like his stock has just gone straight this way. So I think if you're Brian Hartline,
he just got a job.
That is true.
He's running backs coach for the Chicago Bears.
Main or assistant running back coach?
Main. He's in charge of the running backs. I will going back to your point though earlier, but optics wise, Hartline was the official offensive coordinator in 23. Chip comes in, he becomes the co-offensive coordinator. If you hire somebody new to be the offensive coordinator and you kind of dock his title again, I don't know, it could just cause some weird kind of issues. I would imagine that no matter what they do, Hartline will still be the co-OC, whether or not he's the main one or not. At minimum, he'll be co. So, which I think that could make it more difficult to really go get a big name.
2 hours before the show got started, Jim popped in the tailgate and he suggested Will Stein.
Okay, are you leaving Oregon for Ohio State? I don't think so.
And
I'm not saying Ohio State's not better, because I think they are. I mean, they just won the national title, but my head coach at Oregon is a defensive guy. I basically run the offensive show with the Ducks.
If Ryan Day is your head coach, then you're not dealing with the same dynamics there. Yeah. I
mean, maybe you would love to collaborate. Like Ryan Day, I think, is a really good offensive coach.
Hold on, though. I will say that one of the reasons Jim Knowles left for Penn State was what? And Ryan Day was an offensive-minded head coach, and he wasn't able to do what?
Run his own defense.
Yeah. So, I don't know.
If they were to do the back the Brinks truck up, all right, so you've got the Dave Biddle, hot board. What was the splashiest name there? Because I got to say that you put Brian Hartline, you put Kevin Wilson, man, you put Jason Candle. That is sensible, and I don't want sensible. Not in this era. No, I want to hear what is the most reckless, back the Brinks truck up. We are going to go poach your guy. Is it Tom's suggestion of Andy Cody?
Yeah, it's definitely Tom's suggestion. Then you got
that's on there, by the way.
Is it on there? Go Dave.
This is being updated live. Dave over at Bucknuts, which you guys should definitely check out if you're an Ohio State fan, or just following that story. He published this 40 minutes ago, but he's updating it. So Kodal Nicky, here's an interesting one. A guy who I think is fairly well respected as offensive coach, recently available, probably pretty cheap. Neil Brown.
Ooh.
Guy did a hell of a job at Troy.
Yep.
Nobody's won at West Virginia since they joined the Big 12. I don't really hold that against him that much.
I got one for
you. Joe Moorhead is on there.
Yeah.
What if he goes the same route he went with Chip?
NFL?
Finds a current head coach who may be kind of on the hot seat, maybe kind of looking to restart the clock a little bit. What if he heads on down to College Park and says, "Hey, Locks, you want to call plays for me at Ohio State?"
For like
$3 million a year. Or whatever.
Yeah.
We'll sign a new contract because I don't know, like Maryland, they went last year? Let's see. They were 4-8, 1-8 in the conference. Just things seem to be going the wrong direction there.
Wouldn't be
one of my favorite recurring bits is all of our Georgia fans trying to pawn off Mike Bobo.
Yeah. Are you guys surprised? I guess we shouldn't be surprised, but losing both coordinators, losing your quarterback, losing probably what will be the most players drafted in the NFL.
Your offensive line coach. Yep.
Offensive line coach Fry's gone, and they're still favored. They're the preseason odds-on favorite to win the national championship.
Yeah, it's not the same thing as Michigan last year, but there are definitely kind of echoes of it where you kind of went all in on the season, and then you accomplished your goal, so everybody just kind of decided, all right, time to move on. And you do wonder if there will be some kind of drop-off next year.
I think there definitely will be some drop-off. The question for me is more like, who should be the favorite? There are
which I think is great. No one should. This is great because I think there's a lot of teams that are in this conversation.
Yeah, I think there is a line you can kind of draw where you say, this team should not be the favorite to win the national title. You can make an argument for Oregon, but Texas, probably Georgia, just because how well they recruit line of scrimmage, Penn State. I think Notre Dame has a lot coming back on the offensive line, and the receivers are going to get better. So if you want to tell me Notre Dame number one, sure. That's probably where the line gets drawn. After that, it's like, if you want to sell me Ole Miss, LSU, Bama, Tennessee, Clemson, Michigan, Texas A&M, Miami, you really got to sell me for them to be number one. But there are, in my mind, 7 teams that you could make a non kind of, 6 teams. I think you can make a non-insane person argument to be number one to start the year.
And the prices kind of indicate that.
Yeah.
In the day after the national championship game, Ohio State, sort of in those way too early boards, are opening up at plus 450, and they are still at the top of the board. But at FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make every moment more, it's plus 600. So it's 600, 650, 650, 700, 800. So is Ohio State the preseason favorite? Yes, but not by a margin that I would consider so significant to say that they are the runaway, undisputed, team to beat heading into next season. They're just happen to be at the top of the board right now. That is a competitive group in the eyes of the odds makers, and clearly for us here too. Any other final thoughts on the Buckeyes?
Yeah. So a lot of Ohio State fans have been unhappy with the offensive line recruiting under Justin Fry. So losing Chip, losing Fry. First of all, I do think the guy did a pretty damn good job coaching this year when they lost the best center in the country and then an offensive tackle who I was listening to some draft stuff over the weekend. If he had stayed healthy, I do think the kid, the San Diego State transfer who was a second year there, Simmons, I think, their left tackle. They said if he had stayed healthy, he would have likely been in the conversation to be the top left tackle taken in the draft. So you lose the best center in the country, you lose maybe the best left tackle, and you still win the national title, moving the pieces around. I think Fry did a nice job coaching them up this year. Clearly, like he and Kelly worked well together. I know that Fry and Kelly had a pretty pretty strong relationship. So it's not entirely surprising that when Kelly goes, he also goes. And I think there is some chance that Ohio State's offensive line recruiting might actually improve with this move. That's been a constant kind of just sensitive subject there in Columbus.
Yeah, Dave in the tailgate saying Justin Fry's departure not exactly drawing tears in Columbus.
So. I mean, look, like it's not easy to coach offensive line. I don't think they were poorly coached. Michigan got him pretty bad, but that's like 2 top 100 picks at D tackle, and
they had 24 different combinations in like an 8-game stretch, and like
they're a little too worried about securing first level, and
Also, like you could say that Justin Fry didn't do a good job, and you can be kind of happy to see him go, but the progress and growth that offensive line showed in the college football playoff as they started getting more familiarity with each other and like chemistry, I think that shows you had a pretty good offensive line coach.
I'd agree right there. Coming up on the other side, well, the assistant coaching carousel continues to swing. We got some big changes of note at Alabama and Oklahoma. Plus, Nebraska doesn't want to do a spring game. What? And more. Next.
The clock never stops. Relive the greatest moments with uninterrupted highlights and more.
It's Gareth Bale. Wonderful goal.
On the UEFA Champions League channel. Streaming free.
We will begin in Tuscaloosa, where it has been confirmed that we will see Ryan Grubb back with Alabama. Now, he never got to coach a game as offensive coordinator, though he did spend a couple weeks as the Crimson Tide's offensive coordinator under Kalen DeBoer. Of course, a longtime partner of Kalen DeBoer at multiple stops. Now, he comes in, and as of right now, Nick Sheridan, who was the offensive coordinator, still on staff. So, we still got to shake things out exactly. But given Ryan Grubb's role on Kalen DeBoer's staff at previous stops, I'm going to call him the offensive coordinator because his mama calls him the offensive coordinator. So, as Grubb comes in and takes over, Danny, what are you keeping your eye on next in terms of what this can mean for Alabama's offense in the post-Jalen Milroe era?
I think this should be good news for Alabama. I think they should be excited about it. Alabama fans. I know it was something that almost happened a year ago when Kalen DeBoer was originally there, and then this opportunity opened up where I completely made sense. He wanted to stay in Seattle, didn't have to move his family. Now that the opportunity's back again, this is a pairing that's worked really well with Kalen DeBoer. And you asked, you kind of referenced Nick Sheridan there. Nick Sheridan, I think, has always been used to being underneath Ryan Grubb, right, when they've been on the same staff. So I don't think there's anything that Nick Sheridan would catch him by surprise, that he's upset or that he leaves. I think he's probably still on staff. And now I'm fascinated to see what they're going to do at QB. But I think overall, like, this is a good move. The Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb pairing has been really, really solid everywhere they've been.
I don't know what the roles are going to be, but I don't think you could look at this as a bad thing in any way. Just getting all those guys back together. They've had some, like Danny said, they've had some decent amount of success together doing it.
I mean, I look, Jeremy Bernard could have gone pro. I don't think it would have been a high pick, but he certainly could have gone pro. He decided to come back. You get year 2 of Ryan Williams. I think you got 3 of 5 back. Best I can look at this depth chart on the offensive line. I'm fairly confident that Alabama's going to have good quarterback play this year. Not great, but good, because you have 3 options who you elected, and you wanted to keep Ty Simpson and did. Okay, right. You brought in Austin Mack because you liked him, and you also have 5-star Keelan Russell, who's really pretty damn good, guys. So, between those 3, I think the winner of that 3-way competition is likely to be pretty good. Offensive line should be good. It's going to be a different looking offense because DeBoer likes to run the quarterback based on his history, although not the very recent history at Washington. But without Jalen Milroe's legs, I mean, Milroe was kind of the best athlete on the offense, or one of them. I mean, him with the ball in his hands plus an extra blocker was their best run game for most of the year, right? Defensively, they could be decent again. Like it's not crazy to think that Bama could be really good this year. They still have a lot of talent on that team, and I don't think DeBoer's forgotten how to coach.
Well, Alabama was good.
Yeah.
They weren't.
They were just they were more inconsistent than they were under Nick.
Correct. But they were good.
They were a normal ass good team instead of being the juggernaut that everybody was used to.
Yes.
So I'm glad you brought up the Keelan Russell thing because, Austin Mack was initially recruited to Washington by an offensive staff that Kalen DeBoer, Ryan Grubb. Ryan Grubb comes in. He was he was in charge of the quarterbacks at Washington. He was in charge of the quarterbacks at Fresno State. At Sioux Falls, he was in charge of the quarterbacks. Is this like they're going to go in and let them compete? But doesn't this, if you were trying to handicap this, make you think that there's a slightly better chance than there was 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago that Austin Mack might have a good shot at being able to step in and be the quarterback here? Again, he's got to go do it against Ty Simpson, who's always had the pieces to be able to go out there and be successful. And then I love that you brought up Keelan Russell because I had not entertained the idea that as a true freshman, he would come in and win that job. But if that's more of a factor than I should be taken note of, then that is another storyline for us to watch for Alabama spring practice.
I mean, he certainly has played on a loaded high school team. But Bama's pretty loaded too. Not quite as loaded relative to the competition as maybe his high school team was. But I think he's going to be in the conversation.
Interesting. What is this like? We wait and see how they battle it out. Read the tea leaves. Read the practice reports.
This could be a post-spring, some movement here in the transfer portal, and then somebody maybe gets a good player out of this.
Just like we saw with Jalen Miller's first spring.
Yeah.
Remember they brought in Ty Buckner from Notre Dame because they weren't happy with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think we'll get some indicators of how things are going with the way in a few different spots. At the post-spring portal.
Like we could see someone leave after spring from this room and maybe even a +1 also if things shake free in the transfer portal.
Like defensively, they don't lose that much. It really matters, honestly. I mean, Tim Smith, okay.
Otis.
You lose.
Jaheim Otis.
But he didn't play much.
I know. I mean,
no, but I mean, you're right. Like now you lose Jahad Campbell, you lose Robinson. Like that is fairly big at linebacker. I think Deontay Lawson comes back healthy, which would be nice. DB wise, you lose Malachi Moore, you lose Devontae Smith. That was a very young room.
Yeah.
And is probably going to be better just by like positive regression to the mean. So I mean, I think there's a lot to like from this team. Most likely. Got to get offensive line figured out, but yeah.
Staying in the Southeastern Conference, so we got some news from Oklahoma from over the weekend. Wes Goodwin, who was the defensive coordinator at Clemson, longtime kind of deputy of Brent Venables when Venables was there with the Tigers, that he is going to be joining the staff. A few other staff changes as well, but the big headline to me, and if there's something else, definitely let me know, is that Brent Venables is taking over the play calling of the defense. Now, you can read this as a smart move. You can read this as a desperate move. Tom, how do you choose to read this for Brent Venables as he's going into a pressure-packed season as head coach in Norman?
I'm going to go with the latter option. Feels kind of desperate to me. I mean, I just don't know if he's clearly feeling pressure if he's at the point where he's like, I'm the only one who can call this defense. I need to be in charge. I need to, if the ship's going down, I'm going down with it, blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying it can't work. It's not like Brent Venables doesn't have a history of being pretty good at coordinating a defense. It's just, you're the head coach now. And just one interesting thing to think about here, not that any of us look at Oklahoma as a team that's going to compete for a national title next year. Who was the last national title winning head coach to be calling plays on either side of the ball at the time?
Okay, let's just this year, Ryan Day, no. Prior year, who won it the prior year? Michigan, no.
I'll answer the question. Is in the college football playoff era, none.
So no the last one, the last one to do it is Jimbo in 2013.
In Jimbo before, yep. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So, and it's coincidental maybe, but Ryan Day gives up play calling, brings in Chip Kelly, and what happens? They win the national title. So I think if you're Venables and you're trying to rebound from a terrible season as far as Oklahoma is concerned, this could maybe buy you some time, but I don't think this is the long-term answer by any stretch.
I'm going to kind of buy this as okay. I think Brent Venables is a way better DC than he is a head coach. And if he's going to, go down with the ship, like you're going to go down calling the plays. If you listen to some guys talk about how it is to face a Venables defense when he was at Clemson, they thought he was a hell of a play caller and really just knew what to call at the right times. I also like the hires of Nate Dreiling and Wes Goodwin. I thought Nate did a pretty good job when he was in New Mexico State, and they had like no speed, and he managed to actually win some games. Utah State was a really jacked up situation, obviously, that he took over late this year. And Wes Goodwin did not work out at Clemson as a DC. But everybody I talked to at Clemson was like, that is Venables' guy. And they work extremely well together. So I think pairing those two back up probably will work for Oklahoma. I mean, to me, the question is more like, how does Venables do everything else? We do see sometimes these coaches who are under a lot of pressure, they micromanage like crazy. We saw a pretty good exodus from this staff for jobs that I think are probably it would be charitable to call them lateral moves. And so I do read into that some as far as guy's first-time head coach, a lot of pressure, moving to the SEC. Is he somebody people enjoy working for? Is he somebody who people think, yeah, this guy is trusting me to do my job and isn't going to micromanage me? I don't know. We'll have to see. But certainly my read on the situation is that. But him calling plays, if that means he's micromanaging other things a little bit less, maybe it's a good thing.
Danny, what are our sources close to Oklahoma saying?
Not that dissimilar about him being a great defensive coordinator, and the head coach, is still in question. Yeah. What is he as a culture builder? Well, I was going to ask a different question. When was the last time we saw a job that was salvaged? Because a lot of times this is when we see these drastic decisions made. Hey, I'm either giving up play calling or I'm going to take back play calling work. I mean, the instances that I can remember, like Jimbo Fisher when he brings in Bobby Petrino, like Gus Malzahn, who did it like 10 times throughout his career, whether he was given up or taken back, whatever it was. Other ones, sometimes it feels like a Hail Mary.
Yeah.
Let me just try to save this. Now, I appreciate it. If I was a guy who had the track record of his defensive coordinator, Brent Venables, and my job was on the line and it was hot seat, I'd be like, let me do it. Let me take over this job. So I understand why he's doing it, but it usually doesn't happen in the healthiest of environments.
Good point from very recent memory. Dave Aranda took over the defensive play calling, but I mean, was Dave Aranda's play calling what got Baylor to have a little bit of a bounce back season?
No, it was Heisman dark horse Sawyer Robertson.
Getting it through. I'll tell you what. There was the mid-season nuking of the offensive staff, right? And now we go into next season with a new offensive staff. So micromanaging, like everything is clean slate right here across that whole room. You've Ben Arbuckle's coming in from outside the program. He's going to be your new voice of the offense. You've got a new quarterback likely that you've sort of already starting to build around. He can take over the defensive staff or the defensive play calling because that's like these are his people. I mean, Todd Bates was at Clemson, is on this staff. Wes Goodwin was at Clemson, is on this staff. I mean, he is leaning on all of the strengths that even allowed him to be considered for the Oklahoma head coaching job. And he's going to try to use that. So it might not win him a national championship, but man, I would argue that for Oklahoma football, we need to talk about like the next step rather than something like winning a national championship still feels a couple steps down the line for the Sooners. So I get that as certainly in that sense. Anything else on Oklahoma to keep an eye on?
I mean, they also, I think, are having a pretty good drop off of defensive talent. So
from this year to next year?
Yeah, I think so. Not terrible, but like they do lose some pretty important pieces off that defense. The offense is going to have to make up for it. Like if Venables can get that defense to hold serve from what it was this year, which I thought was really good, that's a win, I think. And then the offense has to kind of pick up the slack.
Does Brent Venables coach the Oklahoma Sooners in 2026?
I'm going to say no.
I'll say
no.
yes.
Yes.
I mean, if we're just having to make a call on it, like what's his contract?
I don't know in this
like
country.
Castiglione's still the AD, right?
Yes.
I mean, he's a guy who is not going to get fired if the head coaching hire doesn't work out. Like he's a pretty long time tenured guy who's respected. It's not like one of these guys who's blowing a bunch of different hires. Did we figure out what the guaranteed money is on the deal? Because they signed him to what we thought was like an unnecessary extension on November 23rd for
Google's AI, which is always reliable, says that if the Sooners were to fire Venables in 2025, the buyout would be $35 million.
I mean, that's not nothing, but is it like $35 million payable within 30 days, or can they structure it like over the long term? If it's over the long term, that's okay.
My thought is that Oklahoma will be a little bit better, and that the way that the SEC, I think that it will be easier for Oklahoma to take steps forward, even if there aren't some readily available awesome answers, just because of the way that pack is among teams with talent in the Southeastern Conference. Either that or they'll get buried and the bottom will fall out, in which case, absolutely. But like somebody in the tailgate was asking when this conversation started, Mark Stoops or Brent Venables, who do you think gets fired first? I would say Stoops.
I would say Venables because Stoops has a pretty big contract, right? And Oklahoma, they care about winning.
Also, Kentucky just lost to Calipari this weekend, so they're kind of distracted right now.
Or did they really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Came home and beat them.
Without their best NBA prospect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
While losing to everybody else, but he comes and beats Kentucky.
I mean, wouldn't it be hilarious if you get?
Yeah, they've been losing a lot.
Yeah, they stink.
Yeah. All right. Elsewhere, out in Lincoln, Nebraska, very sort of, double take kind of headline as Nebraska is considering, and maybe even as much as likely, going to cancel their spring game because of the concern of other teams poaching his players. Now, here's what we have heard from coaches who have gone, full tinfoil hat on we're not going to put our spring game on television, or, we are going to have a spring game for fans only, but then the thing we do for television is going to be more like a showcase, or maybe you go full Ole Miss and you're doing dunk contests on the field. And it really is just sort of more of a carnival along the way. Nebraska is one of the places where people show out for spring games. I think that's the thing that is kind of alarming to me. I'm not going to cry over it. I just don't think that we're losing a great tradition of college football. But I mean, Danny, what do you make of this?
They were fourth last year in spring game attendance. I think they had 67,000 people showed up. I don't think this is done yet because Matt Rule did say we'll figure out something. Like they would do, like you mentioned, do they do the dunk contest, or they have some sort of spring fair, whatever it is, to showcase their players to their fans. Do you guys think this might be more of and I wonder if any other coaches will follow suit, more of a protest that the deciding factors, whoever's deciding about the spring portal, which the coaches unanimously voted on, we need to go back to just one, although it hasn't passed through the next level, that this is sort of a protest vote, like, hey, this is the type of things that we're considering doing if we don't do away with the spring portal window. That was the first thing that popped in my mind, because I do think it's legit. I do think he's worried about being seen on TV but I think it's more about getting poached after spring practice, because they can watch your players. They can come out, they'll figure out a way to see who's good on your roster. I think it's more about the calendar itself.
You said there were 67,000 people at their spring game?
Yeah.
How many of them were there were scout players to put bids in on them?
It's true.
No, but it was on Big Ten Network, because when when they schemed open a Dylan Raiola touchdown pass, that turned into content in the college football world in April of 2024.
I understand if you're a coach, the paranoia about people snooping around your players, but I don't know. This just like Danny said, I don't feel like this is actual. This is just a weird thing to me. We're not going to play our spring game because I'm worried about people poaching our players. Okay.
Yeah. Is it so much about poaching, or as it is keeping your locker room happy. Like from a school standpoint, I do know that. So first of all, a lot of these studs don't play in the spring game or play very limited, which means that guys who are probably not going to be actual contributors end up playing a lot of snaps in the spring game. Now, that might give you exposure, sure, for another school to come poach you. But it also gives you leverage against the current school to hit them up for more money, right? And, I mean, the proper answer for a lot of these GMs should be, it's a spring game, bro. You were going against a walk-on, pound sand. But it also creates, I think it kind of like sows some discontent in the locker room if a guy balls out at the season finale of spring, crushes it, and then he's making less than a guy who's probably going to be the actual starter come fall, who maybe sat out or maybe didn't play very many snaps or whatever. I think they're worried about like some of these second and third stringers hitting them up for more money. That's not a Nebraska only worry about. I've had a lot of guys who work for teams share that. It's like, yeah, we get these idiot agents out there like, oh, my kid had 140 yards in the spring game. He needs like triple the money you guys promised him. And they're like, bro, it's a spring game. But then you're pissing the kid off, and so you got attitude. Like, maybe justify them, maybe not. Like the kid's got an attitude about you. So if you don't give the opportunity to ball out on TV, it kind of keeps salaries down.
It's practice, man. Like if you make a really good catch in a practice that isn't televised, are you going and demanding more money from? It's like, did you see that catch I made in the drill? I want $500,000 more.
For reference, well, here's what Matt Rule can point to. Last year, 6 players left the program and entered the transfer portal after the spring game. That's what he's pointing to. He also said, I dealt with a lot of people offering our players a lot of opportunities after the spring game. So you go out and you bring in a bunch of new players and then showcase them for all the other schools to watch. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Rule continues, the word tampering doesn't exist anymore. It's an absolute free, open, common market. I don't necessarily want to open up to the outside world, have people watch our guys and say, he looks like a pretty good player. Let's go get him.
He realizes his games are televised during the season, right?
Also, all these kids know how to pull the film off their iPad.
Like off their huddle?
Practice film.
Yeah.
That's why I think I think this is more of a public protest of the spring portal window.
It could be.
It could be.
I think it is.
I had not considered that, but coaches playing politics with the portal windows by holding their spring games hostage. Wow. I don't know. I don't think it'll work, but I mean, wow, what a move. What a move, especially at a place like Nebraska. All right. Coming up on the other side, Wednesday is, speaking of player movement, Wednesday is the conclusion of the 2025 recruiting cycle. It is February's National Signing Day. We will give you a look at a few of the names and a few of the storylines that you need to follow and more. Next.
I feel home when I see the faces that remember my own. When I'm with my friends, I feel home.
Garrett in the tailgate jumping in on the end of that conversation. But if we don't have spring games, how are we going to decide which team gets the steak dinner and which team gets hot dogs?
That is a great
point. It's a good point.
Danny, did y'all ever have any of those little like bit?
No, we just played the dang spring game. Like it was another practice. We didn't get little carrots to hang out there. It was like you were either going to, ball out or lose your job. Like that was about the depth chart. It wasn't about who's getting the treat at dinner.
I like the treat at dinner as I like the drafts, like when you've got assistant coaches draft their teams. I like creating a little bit of competition.
I do too. I think it's fun.
In terms of the spring game. I think that stuff is a lot of fun. And I certainly like it more than when the spring game is manipulated to make sure that your first string on offense is playing against like the third string defense and that your first string defense is playing the third string offense. All of a sudden whatever team ends up winning 58-3 or something like that. No, I like having a little bit of competition there at the end of spring practice.
The thing I remember the most about spring practice and the spring game specifically, it was when the green jerseys came off. And so I was very protected wearing the green jersey, which means they couldn't touch you. They couldn't come around. and going against guys like Derek Brooks and Derek Alexander and Andre Wadsworth and all those guys on the defensive side of the ball, when they saw that green jersey come off, it was like sharks with that little scent of blood in the water, and they thought they could get a little taste of it. They were trying to get it all out of their system from having to pull up all the time in practice.
Oh, you were pre-Kendra.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What is
and
that?
Mark Richt kind of like would taunt me with it because he knew I went to a tiny school, and like I got really lucky because I was thrust right into like the backup role from very early, so they couldn't afford to get me hurt. We were very thin at QB, and so Coach Richt he kept telling me all fall, he's like, "Oh, wait until the spring." He's like, "That green jersey's coming off." He's like, "You don't know what this is going to be like." And he just taunted me for almost a year. I mean, I had anxiety. I think I still have PTSD from those nightmares.
Did you get put on your ass at least once in a spring
Oh
game?
yeah.
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
And then they were talking all kind of smack, because that's just what you do.
Well, Kanell played 8-man football, like that kind of stuff. All right. Wednesday, it is a National Signing Day, and this will be for some of the programs. All the work was done in December. We're just going to get a few more I's dotted and T's crossed, a few more things closed up with those last prospects. But as we were getting ready for this week, it certainly is worlds away from the way that we looked at this Wednesday in February in years past, but maybe even more so now, especially with the transfer portal and the fluid nature of college football rosters. But what are some of the things that we should be keeping our eyes on as we go into Wednesday?
Sure. So top 5 entering the day: Texas, Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, and Oregon. Does anybody have a chance to move up in that rankings? They do, actually. Michigan is seen as the front runner for Ty Haywood, who's a top 50 player for us at 24/7 Sports, a big-time offensive tackle. FSU and Bama have been involved, but Michigan is where he's widely expected to go on Wednesday. That's kind of like the big blue-chip prospect who's still out there to be had. So that would be a great get for Michigan, obviously, to go with their class. And Michigan right now sits at number 7. So after just seeing Ohio State win the national title, they are coming back with a fury. Honestly, there's not a lot of teams. If you scroll, where do you have to really scroll to find a surprise in the positive direction? Oregon being top 5 is not a surprise. Auburn bouncing back, being top 10 is not a surprise. Michigan, Florida, A&M, LSU, Tennessee, Notre Dame, Miami, USC, Penn State, Ole Miss, Oklahoma. South Carolina at 18. That's kind of their high watermark. Yeah, they got they're still not a blue chip ratio team. They're taking more 3 stars than they are 4 stars, but they do a pretty good job of scouting over there, and I think have stabilized some under Beamer. Georgia Tech maybe capitalizing some on their nice season that they had, number 21. So that's encouraging. I think if you're a Tech fan, Missouri sitting there at 20, that's pretty solid. There are not many surprises. Clemson sitting there with only 15 high school commits is a bit surprising because they have not, for the most part, used the transfer portal under Dabo Swinney, but now they are a little bit. I think the fact that they're doing that, and this is a small high school class, shows you probably just how much Clemson has coming back for this upcoming season. Their roster retention was pretty high. Zahir Mathis, he's a top 175 player for us, big time defensive end. Maryland, UCLA, FSU, maybe Virginia Tech. We'll see, but that's another one to watch. Not quite in the level as Haywood, and that's really it, guys. This is a weird situation where almost everybody is signed by December. When 10 years ago, this was the day. Now it's the December day.
What about the first year coaches? Who's been able to actually make up some ground? Who's been able to get hired and you maybe came in with nothing to put together. Maybe then you're trying to get something to put together. Has anybody stood out on that front?
So, Belichick's made some visits and whatnot. He really hasn't crushed it, I wouldn't say, in high school so far, but I think he's trying to lay the groundwork for 26. You tell me, a lot of people on him thought, hey, maybe it's a 1-year thing, maybe a 2-year thing, but he seems to be kind of concerned with the long term there as well at UNC. Right? That to me is...
All right, so from a number standpoint, when he took over, they were, I'm not going to get this exactly right, but I'll be close. I think they were 78th when he took over, and I think they're 37th. That is still below the standard where Mac Brown had it, because Mac Brown was usually floating in that until that last year. Mac Brown would usually operate in that 20 to 35 kind of range.
Right.
So he's still kind of on the low end of that. And when you go and you look at the quality of some of the players that he has been able to add to change the math on their team ranking, they are not players that get them markedly closer to winning an ACC championship, but they are players that at least make it so that you are not going to have a total bottom fall out type situation. So like the effort, nobody is going to give him A+ for effort when you're getting paid $10 million a year, but there has at least been effort to be able to create some sort of initial momentum. You mentioned for the 26 class, that's where he's going after higher end guys. But the work that I can tell from the 25 class has been like, look, we've got to bring in, we need warm bodies that are capable, that can be able to come in and fill out this roster. And that's sort of what my read is, without having a good feel of what a lot of these 3 stars are actually going to be like.
Like even with the very friendly schedule, I think that the ACC gave UNC, that number, what FanDuel dropped at 8, I think, to start, like that still felt high.
Right.
Or to me now, like it still feels like, hey, we were correct in saying that's high.
Yeah.
West Virginia's added like 6 new guys for Rich Rod. That's not terrible on them. Like other coaching changes that we actually have to think about. Like Scott Frost has done okay. Barry Odom, I'm not gonna lie to you, I've not been following how Purdue's been recruiting over the last 2 months. I don't think recruiting was necessarily their worst problem under Walter. They gave attention.
Yeah, I would agree on that. So if you were to make a call right now, who do you think ends up being number 1? Texas holds on?
I think Texas holds on, yeah.
Unless we get some flips or big surprises along the way.
Which we had Sark pretty high up there, I think, on our next coach to win the first title.
Would this be his first recruiting title? His first number 1? Got to be.
Yeah. Pretty sure.
Yeah, they weren't number 1 last year, right?
Because didn't Georgia catch them that one year where they had a chance for it?
Yeah.
Was that the 23 class? Oh, Bama caught him too. Like for a while in 23, they were really up there, and it was neck and neck, and then Bama ran them down as well.
Yeah. So that again, more signs towards Texas not going anywhere. A team that, like we mentioned at the beginning of this show, is very much in that top group of national title contenders as we look ahead to the fall of 2025. We will be back on Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Come and join us live as we continue to move things along. Any early signing day takeaways or big news that we have, we'll certainly pass along to you as well. Now, we also are continuing to hear from you. We love getting interactive at this time of the year with the big old bag of mail. You leave us a 5-star review, put that question in there. We can throw it in the mailbag. Also, if you show up live, if you reach out to us individually, we'll pass those along and get it on in there. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fornelli. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow him at Danny Kanell. Follow me at Chip _ Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See ya.
See ya.